we will go ahead and get things set up here for solar power at Heaven's Helpers Soup Cafe. They're a little hard to miss because they're wearing their yellow t-shirts. And as part of their presentation, I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves. There will be time for questions and hopefully lots of answers at the end or throughout. I'll let them set that up, but let's go ahead and take it away.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say it's all right.
Hello, everyone. Our field project is named Sun to Soup, and our goal is to feed more people in need in our community by installing solar panels on the building of the local charity, the Soup Cafe. But first, let me introduce you to Team Solar. Emily Smith from Newberry College, Teresa Crest from Bartlett West, Barry Schumeyer from KFYR TV, Nick Cullen from Houston Engineering, Kyron Miller from Bismarck State College, and myself, Rita Melhoff from the Bisman Bombshells Roller Derby League. As with the field projects presented before us, our team was influenced by participating in the issue days hosted by the Leadership Bismarck-Mandan program. Our second issue day was Energy and Natural Resources Day, where we heard from the speaker, Jim Kambites from Light Spring, a local solar energy company. Jim spoke about the solar industry and how North Dakota compares to the rest of the nation. Did you know that North Dakota ranks 13th in the country for the most solar hours? But North Dakota ranks last in the nation with installed solar systems. These facts made a big impact on our team and directly influenced our project. Another speaker that day was Julie Fedorchak with the North Dakota Public Service Commission. And she challenged us to be the first leadership group to create a field project based on the things that we learned during Energy and Natural Resources Day. Team Solar accepted that challenge, and we are proud to present this field project to you today.
So in addition to accepting that challenge from Energy Day, a month later, we had Human Services Day, and we had Mark Meyer from Heaven's Helpers Soup Cafe come. Mark is with us today in the back, and he shared a little bit about his organization, about the community impact that their Soup Cafe has, the people that they serve. They started in 2009. They moved to their current location in 2018, and they serve approximately 200 people a day. And what I think was interesting for us to connect these two issue days together was we liked the idea of solar power and what that could provide. And then we had an organization that was completely nonprofit that survived on donations and volunteer hours. Could we put those together? And the question was asked to Mark during Human Services Day, would he be interested in having solar power as part of his organization? He said yes. So that kind of connected the dots for us.
Can I interrupt? We have been talking for years about solar power, and it just wasn't feasible, and it was a dream out there. So it's not like we're like, oh, that might be a good idea. It was something that was out there as a dream from the get-go. So.
For those of you who have not seen this location, this is the Soup Cafe. It was originally built to be the Chesapeake Seat House. And as you can likely imagine, the Chesapeake Seat House had much larger structural requirements than what would be required for a soup cafe. This was extremely beneficial for us in the fact that when looking at solar panels for this specific facility, there were no structural improvements that needed to be made. So our project partners included both the City of Bismarck and MDU. The City of Bismarck, we worked with them from a planning and zoning and permitting perspective, as well as MDU with their interconnection agreement in order to connect the solar panels to their grid. This is a little graph that explains the 2021 monthly bills on their electrical usage. And as you can see, last year alone, they had over $18,000 in electrical bills alone. And for a nonprofit charity that has no government funding whatsoever, this is a significant cost to them. We're trying to see if we can lower that in any way. Kind of covers this up here on the Zoom bar, but our original project goal was to create a solar panel system that was large enough so the soup kitchen would not have any bill at the end of each month. And the way that the system works is called net metering. During peak times and peak usage, you're utilizing the solar panels and even possibly some electricity from the grid. But similar to a cell phone plan where you have data banking, you can, or during periods of low electrical use, you can send that electricity back to the grid and gain credits in order to have a net zero bill at the end of each month.
Nick mentioned a great goal, and that was a net zero bill was what we idealistically, we're an idealistic, very positive thinking group. We even agreed on the same t-shirts. So we're all on the same page. So we thought ideally, well, we're going to put up solar panels and Mark is not going to have a utility bill for the rest of his business life. That would be great. That can happen if you have a roof the size of US Bank and you're right underneath the equator. So project mission change, we had to pivot a little bit. One of the bullet points here on the screen, folks, is misconceptions of solar power. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of moving parts. We got a tremendous education for the three different vendors that gave us presentations on how much can you produce in North Dakota, what's your roof, even is the roof facing the correct way, meaning to the south. And then we've got an education looking at Mark's bills. MDU is a provider where he's located. And this will interest all of you that manage an office, own a business. If you have a business or an office that generates more than a 20 kW spike at any one time, you're probably going to know what demand billing is. After this, you're going to look very closely. The average demand charge on Mark's bill was about a third of the entire bill. In the month of February, it's $393. In the year, it averaged $464 on an average bill of about $1,200. So that's a big number, the demand charge. This is an explanation from an electrical site that I found. Don't even read it. We're going to go to the next site. We're going to go to the next slide. It's very electric speak. So this is a photocopy of Mark's bill from one of the months. The next slide, Rena did a great job in highlighting. This is the bill. This is the demand charge line for the February bill. The best I can explain a demand charge is every one of us has times where with their home or business we have peak output. Okay, so there's a maximum amount of you've got every freezer. If you're at Mark's Soup Cafe, every boiler element's on, all the compressors are on. They're walking in and out of the big coolers. So if you think of the utility companies, I sympathize with them a little bit. They've got to allow for. They've got 4,000 customers. All 4,000 of those customers have a peak. They've got a demand spike, and it's a 15-minute increment of the most power you use in a given billing period. That sets your demand charge. When you bump up against that, you have a really, really high kilowatt charge. Okay, so it's not a penalty, but it allows for the utility companies to provide to have no brownouts, no blackouts. I mean, we've even had some local news stories just yesterday from the PSC about trying to avoid what Texas went through. So that's what a demand charge is. So we believe that we can not only knock down the bill between a third and a half, but if we can lower those demand charges, that could have some additional savings. Then the next slide. So now we learned about demand charges. Now we have to find out, is the Soup Cafe a good fit for solar power? Because solar production is not always a good fit for what the demand that the client needs. Here's the cool thing. This graphs out in the blue. Think of consumption and production as your two key terms. Consumption is what Mark is needing for power. The Soup Cafe, well, probably not a surprise that it spikes between about 11 and 4. They stop serving at 4:30. Well, the cool thing is the production is going to closely mirror what the consumption max needs are. So the answer is solar power is a really good fit for the Soup Cafe. So that was, this is an annual graph, accomplishing goals. And one of the goals I wanted to throw out there for you guys is the goal, I won't speak completely for Mark, but we've been really kind of fallen in love with his mission. The goal isn't just to put solar panels on Soup Cafe, and it isn't even to lower the electrical charge. It's for every $3.10 that he's saving, he can feed another guest. And if you've been to the Soup Cafe, volunteer, go have a meal there and give a donation. It's a really cool experience because he's providing a resource that is far more than just calories. It's a ministry.
Barry. Thank you, Barry. So as Barry mentioned, we decided as a team that the next step in this process was to reach out to local vendors in our region. So we reached out to 3 local vendors, one being LightSpring, which is based here in Bismarck, and they've completed numerous solar projects in our region. One is GenPro Energy Solutions. They're based in Rapid City, South Dakota, and they've also completed a lot of solar projects in their area and in our region. And then the last one was Plains Energy, and they're based in Bemidji, Minnesota, and they've completed projects in Minnesota for local churches, and they recently completed a solar project for a local business in Minot. So after receiving the bids, the team met and we visited and we decided what is the best vendor we should go with and why. So why did we choose LightSpring Solar? Well, first off, they came in with the lowest bid, which was nice. It was a goal that we thought we could meet. We were also impressed with some of the things that their co-founder, Jim Canvites, promotes within his company. One, his motto is by North Dakotans for North Dakotans. He has a history of success in our area. If you driven by spas, etc., that's one of his projects, or United Tribes Technical College. The picture that you see there is United Tribes Technical College that they completed. He also believes in giving back to the community. When they were working on this project at United Tribes, he provided 4 days of training for the students and for individuals to learn how to install the solar panels and how to maintain the system. So now these skills that he was training these individuals on, if they decided to work in the solar industry, they'd have some base knowledge to move forward. So we were impressed with everything that Jim presented to us, and he did answer a lot of our questions. We had a lot of questions, and he was really open to answering those. So now comes a fun part. What's the scope of this project? Well, as you can see here, these are the list of items that LightSpring Solar would provide to the Soup Cafe. There's a lot of things on there, but the key thing that I want you to focus on is on here. After LightSpring installs their product, they're going to provide customer training on that system to the Soup Cafe employees. They're also going to teach them, give them tips on how to maximize that return on investment. So that's really nice. This project, Jim believes, will take about 2 weeks to complete, so it could be done in a short manner. We'd have 4 installers do it, and when he is done with this project, it would be a turnkey operation. He would hand over, let's just say, the keys to the Soup Cafe, and they can maintain it, and it'd be ready to go on day 1 once installed. So, I love Google Earth. So if you're looking down on the Soup Cafe, this is their building, as Nick mentioned, and here's the roof. So these are the 74 panels that would cover this half of the roof facing south. We know that from the information we got, the south facing side of the building is going to get the most sun, which would maximize what they could produce, which would then, as Barry mentioned, drop that demand charge, which is a big chunk of their bill. So by putting them on like this and having the sun hit them at the right times of day, we could reduce that, and that would allow Mark then to use those savings to feed extra people, which was the goal of our project. I'll turn it over to Emily now.
So you may be wondering by now is how are we going to pay for this project? So there's a really cool thing that the federal government allows, and that's a federal tax incentive for installing solar panels. And the idea of that tax credit has kind of steered our fundraising to look for donors who may be able to benefit from that. The tax credit is a dollar for dollar reduction in an organization's tax liability. So if an organization was to give us $64,000 to fund this project, they could reduce their tax liability by $16,000. So in a nutshell, we're asking an organization to invest that money into us and our project instead of paying that to the IRS. A tax credit is available only to companies with a tax liability. So therefore, the Soup Cafe being a charity and having no tax liability isn't available, it's not available for them to claim that. So we have to look for a company that does have a tax liability. And the way that would work is a company who does have that liability would purchase the solar panels and all the installation costs, and then they would claim the credits, and then they would sell it back to the Soup Cafe for $1 so they could get the ownership. So in order to get these funds, our fundraising campaign began on May 1st and will go through October 1st. And in this phase, we will be sending letters to potential donors with the idea that we hope to meet with them face to face to tell them about our project and to ask them for money. We also hope to launch a GoFundMe in November, depending on our progress towards our goal. And there's also grants available that we are looking at applying for. On October 1st, MDU Resources has a grant application that opens, and depending on how close we are to meeting our goal, we would like to apply for that. The amount of money that this grant can award potentially could fund our entire project, and those grants are awarded in spring of 2023. So getting some funding has some parameters to it. It's important for us to emphasize to anybody giving us money that that money can't have any strings attached. It needs to be one-time good faith donation, or the funding needs to just be given with the idea that you're going to get the tax credit. They can't have any naming rights on the Soup Cafe. They don't get to name our project. We don't want anybody to put their name on our project. We also cannot make payments to Light Spring. Therefore, we have to fundraise the entire amount in full to give to them before they can start ordering the supplies and beginning the project. And then there's also the idea that we might not meet our goal. So therefore, we have several backup projects that kind of go along with different funding measurements. So the future is bright with this project. The project is very low maintenance. Once we hand over the keys to Mark, he has agreed that he will do all future maintenance and pay for all of that maintenance, if there is any. It's estimated that possibly 2 times a year, if there's a large snowstorm, somebody from the Soup Cafe will have to go onto the roof to remove that snow. There's a huge community impact with this project, saving the Soup Cafe money so they can expand their ministries in other projects. And there's also several other future possibilities for us to expand this project through putting additional panels on the north side of the roof, installing a solar thermal heating system on the side of the building, which collects sunlight and turns that into heat, and also some smaller projects that we've been in talk with Mark about. So the question is, how many more can we feed? With the completion of this project, the Soup Cafe will be able to save so much money every month that they'll be able to feed an additional 2,000 guests per year.
So we wanted to have that firsthand experience with our partner organization. So as a team, we went down to the Soup Cafe and we volunteered for a couple of hours. And we prepared some food, we served food, but I think the overall experience that we had was that it's not just meals, like Barry had said either before. It's not just providing meals, there's so much more to it. The people, I don't know if you've ever been to a soup kitchen, but a lot of times those are like cafeteria style environments. You just walk through a line, you get your meal and you go about eating. At the Soup Cafe, it's a different experience. You come in the front door, it's a restaurant style facility. You're greeted, you get to sit in either a booth or a table. You get waited on. So when we were volunteering there, we were taking their orders. There's a selection of food. You don't just get what is being served that day. You have a choice of. You get soup and a sandwich. You can have salad choices. You have dessert options. But I think more than anything, those guests that are there have their dignity. They feel like they are sitting down at a restaurant, a lot of times with their families and just having a meal. So we had a great experience down there. And we also shot a video that we're going to share, and then we'll take questions.
The Heaven's Helper Soup Cafe is a soup kitchen that we operate as a small little restaurant, and we're open 6 days a week. We offer free food throughout the week, and anybody can come in and we treat them with love and respect. We just try to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We serve around 200 meals a day, either a little bit more, a little bit less, but that's fluctuates throughout the month as people run out of money and food stamps more towards the end of the month. Solar panels will, first of all, make us a little bit more self-sufficient, and they will add to our bottom line, because this is not a cheap endeavor to be able to feed folks 6 days a week as much as they want to eat all day long. So it will be a tremendous blessing to be able to have lower electric costs because of solar. Our electrical needs are immense. When we put the electrical lines in, we need 3-phase in because our dishwasher uses a 3-phase. Fat Sally, which is our 30-gallon open skillet that we cook our soup in, that uses a ton of electricity. We've got 11 different freezers and 6 different fridges, and that's not including our walk-in freezer, which is another one in our walk-in fridge. Besides the lighting and space, we have computers for folks to find work in, laundry room, a couple washers and dryers. We even have 2 freeze dryers so that we can preserve the food when it comes in, and be able to freeze dry that, have it ready when we need it. We receive no government funding. All of our support comes from the community, whether it's the food that comes in or the donations that people give to keep the lights on. So any help with our electric and solar would be such a blessing. Thank you.
Soup is being served. Mark is kind enough to bring in some of his homemade soup to share with you all.
It's cauliflower and Untitled chicken.
Those are your choices. We will take any questions. What is the lifespan of a solar panel? Approximately.
The lifespan expected, at least if the proposals are saying over 30 years.
Oh, it's longer than I thought.
Yes. And the return on investment, if the soup cafe was to buy it outright, the returns would take approximately 10 years to pay off.
Did Jim give you kind of a estimate of what type of maintenance could potentially be expected? I know with these things, you never really know exactly, but.
Very little maintenance is required. Obviously, during the larger snow events, they could get covered up. He did state, however, most snow events, even if there's a 1-inch gap where some of the black panel shows up, it heats up so quickly that it really just clears itself off. But in terms of maintenance, they can have maintenance agreements. They can come by. They're there to serve the soup cafe as well. So over the lifespan of the product, they're there to help.
So is the $64,000 bid locked in because of inflation and other costs right now?
No, we've been fortunate over the last 2-3 months and 2 proposals that we've received from them that they've held their bid steady.
Okay.
But we're well aware that it could change. They've been open about that too. And they just said, you know what, we're going to try to give you the best price possible, but we just can't guarantee.
Have they given you, and like, obviously we don't know how much more prices and stuff will increase. You've had those conversations with them, and there is that potential.
That there's a potential, but they don't even want to guess at the percentage that it will increase. They do give us a proposal end date. So it is a locked in amount until an end date, but we're past that point.
Okay.
Are there other trends that would, I guess, counteract the increase in labor costs that actually it's getting cheaper to make those panels, or I guess it might be cheaper in the future to do the same kind of work? Are there multiple trends that are occurring at the same time? I guess would be my question.
Well, one thing that we have to keep in mind too is this credit that an organization can take advantage of, it ends at the end of 2023. So although it may get cheaper, it might be in somebody's best interest to take advantage of this. But obviously, we don't know how the price could fluctuate and become cheaper. They haven't really shared too much with us about the foreseeable costs.
Did you guys explore the applicability or the lack thereof? If there is damage to the system, if the facility's insurance policies cover any of that?
We did talk about insurance early on, and yes, share building insurance would cover that.
So at the United Tribes Project, they talked about having students come and learn. Is that something that you guys are looking into also? Because I know that the BSc energy students might be interested in something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, Kyron might be able to answer that a little
I'm
bit
sorry,
better.
I missed the question.
Oh, just,
I'm like serving, I'm in the zone.
I know how that goes. Just my ears kind of perked up when they talked about the United Tribes students learning from what Jim was doing down there. And I thought, are your students gonna come, or are you gonna invite even maybe some high school students just to come and see?
Yep. So one of our plan B options, a company that we work with, BSC works with, would consider donating the solar panels. Solar panels, then they would teach, they do like kind of a trainer, and due to their company that is would donate them, they would teach us or teach our students how to install them and stuff. So we would mimic that program. If that would be our plan B, that they would, the companies, that they would donate the solar panels.
Or that could even be, even if the south side does go through exactly how you have this envisioned, maybe that could be like on the north side.
Yep, that was our plan D, is if the south side goes well.
Cool.
This company said, yep, we would donate the solar panels, and then we would train the trainer per se, and they would work with our students at the college and our instructors to help install them.
Yeah.
Put them up. Yep.
Very cool.
You guys-
Given the expiration of the tax relief and also some supply chain issues that have been happening, you know, in the country, is there a concern for you that you may not be able to use it because of that supply chain issue? What's the lead time on it?
The lead time, from our understanding, at least up to the end of the proposal date, was we would have materials on its way into us within 4 weeks. So it was, they said, we have these in stock, we do have stuff available. They were aware of the shortages. They wanted to kind of stock up a little bit ahead of time for this construction season. So at least as of right now, for this spring, we're going to have enough supply. However, as we get into summer, we might lose out on that.
And a realistic part of this project is we may end up finding more people who want to donate the money to us instead of claim tax credit. So we're not too concerned about that expiring. Okay.
You guys approached the MDU about a rate reduction?
We have now.
We're gonna approach their foundation about a donation. MDU resources.
And we should note that we already received one donation from Bartlett and West to kind of kick off this thing. So we already received a major donation from them, so we're
On our way.
We're on our way.
The Mark Soup Cafe has such a good reputation, and there's so many people that just are really like that business model, what it does for the community. We think that we're gonna have, you know, whether it's smaller increments, larger increments, I think we'll have good fortune. The other thing we've thought about is, let's say we get the money late this year or even next spring. Jim's been great about saying the price may change. He doesn't think it'll change dramatically. A lot of his infrastructure and parts are American.
With your fundraising timeline, do you have any like events baked into that? Because you have the place to have the events baked into it. So do you have any, because that seems like it could be a potential outreach opportunity for, I know the Soup Cafe is always trying to get people to come in and experience the environment of it and how it's so unique, like you said. Teresa, do you want to talk about?
Sure. So in November, there is a National Homelessness Awareness Week. And historically, the United Way has done kind of like a walk in their shoes event where we walked from the shelter to the Soup Cafe, you know, that kind of thing. So we thought we could maybe, you know, do something along those lines during that week. possibly a feel-good story on KFYR. We're so early in our fundraising at this
Sure.
point that we haven't mapped everything out, but we talked about some different options.
Mark, do you have any additional comments?
You guys covered.
There's wings and more soup back
There's
there.
a
you
lot
guys.
of wings and soup, so help yourself.
Yeah.
It looked like the size of the system as proposed wasn't able to like capture the entire energy demand at any given time. If you installed that second phase or, additional capacity and you got into the selling the energy back to MDU, how does that conversation look like? Are those rates negotiated? How does that process work?
MDU doesn't allow rates, energy to go back to them. The co-ops will, MDU does not. So we would just hope to get to the max. And yeah, you could maybe have a net zero, May to September, the winter months, probably not. It's based on the RF.
Part of our original goal, we were very excited. We thought that that was a possibility and that we could, in addition to lowering utility costs, also help provide a source of revenue to the Soup Cafe by selling back. But through our investigative work, we realized that that's not an option with their provider.
And Gabe, just one more point to that, as we stated, we can get about 30% of our return or of our bill paid for. But if we add on that second half of the roof, we get up to about 50% of our energy usage reduced.
To follow up on that, the demand is for that energy within the site. Is it mostly the freezers, those things that are running at midnight even, as opposed to the heating system, cooling system? Or are there what other components that could be optimized or invested into that could provide similar returns on investment?
See how the graphs, the consumption's really peaked at about 11 a.m. to 3. When most people being served, doors open and shut, and most of the heating elements on. Mark has talked about that's one thing Light Spring brings to the table is a lot of education. They have apps and monitoring systems where you can literally see an app on your phone where it's like, okay, this walk-in freezer is pulling this many amps exactly at this time. So maybe he could be strategic about what to use when.
Like
An
a smart
additional
meter.
part of this is that Mark would gift us the app, or gift Mark the app. I mean, Jim would gift Mark the app, so he can analyze, like, is there a freezer that he has that's super inefficient? And then what he decided is that after installing it, say we install it today, next year at this time, we'd evaluate all the different kind of energy statistics that he had to make improvements to become even more efficient.
Other questions?
Have you reached out to service clubs and other organizations, maybe the downtowners, people who are kind of invested in helping with people in that area?
We haven't reached out to many yet. That's kind of like our next stage, like after this week and the graduation, we plan to meet again to kind of launch our letters that we're going to send out to people and who we're going to send those out to and be kind of strategic with that process. So we have like a little bit of a long-term commitment as a team that we're going to keep meeting and keep putting our efforts towards this project.
We all enjoy his soup, so we'll probably meet down there.
Do you have a timeline in mind?
We hope to have, fingers crossed, maybe we get the MDU grant and then we'd know by spring 2023 of how close we are to funding.
We close out applications on October 1 and reward those in February, January 23.
So I have to ask you then, based on the conversation of timeline, money, output, is 74 panels sort of your lowest, your minimum amount that you're willing to do?
Yep,
Right.
so 74, well, no, we have several different scales. So if for some reason we only get just a very small amount of money, we could potentially install one of the solar thermal panels on the side of the wall. So that is like the lowest kind of project. And that one would help create, the sunlight would come into the panel and create heat for the building. And then our next one would be the 74 panels. And then potentially option 3 is like all out. that's where we would go onto the north side of the building, the south side of the building, and do the solar panel on the wall. So we're kind of
Scalable.
And
yeah,
we
so
would-
if we don't get a lot of bids or a lot of money, we have an option. And if somebody is really excited and just gives us it all, we have an option.
If we would go to the north side, there's structures where we could pivot the solar panels to reach optimal sun. So we would look at what we call like the Cadillac version of solar array. Yep. To capture all the sunlight.
That goes from 64,000 to 118,000.
Fast.
But it's a much greater return on power production as well. The production is getting really close to the consumption.
Any other questions?
You can't leave it till we finish all the soup. So you better go get a second home because Mark worked really hard. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.